there's consequences if they don't do what's expected of them. Understanding consequences is a real life skill, right? You're not going to be able to be there all the time when your kids fall. Them getting these repetitions of consequences allows them to be more pliable and flexible when things don't go their way and when they haven't fulfilled their responsibility. If you're constantly giving them excuses and you're constantly catching them, they're going to feel like there's always that safety net and that they don't have to be responsible and that they can blame other people. That repetition of feeling the weight of responsibility is going to live with them. Welcome back to the Black Belt Parenting Podcast. Today's episode is going to be about discipline. And this is one of my favorite things to discuss just because in martial arts, discipline is one of the number one reasons why people do the martial arts. Everyone seeks it out either for their children or for themselves. And it has been a great determinant in making people more successful in their lives and for giving them peace of mind. So in preparation for this episode, I actually looked up the definition of discipline in the Merriam-Webster dictionary. And, I was kind of like taken aback at the definition because I think it's evolved over time. But according to the dictionary, it is control gained by enforcing obedience or order, and training that corrects, molds, or perfects the mental faculties or moral character. There's definitely like a lot of other definitions to it. And even looking at the adjective of disciplining, it's to punish or penalize for the sake of enforcing obedience and perfecting moral character. And so when I read that, I was kind of like, I don't know if I necessarily agree with the dictionary. And so I went further because I wanted to actually have a definition of discipline for this episode that would kind of be in line with what we thought. So basically, the word discipline is derived from the Latin word disciplinare, which means literally to teach or train, as in a disciple. Okay. And that was kind of more in line with me and what I was thinking. And then I went further to look at sort of like the medical definition of discipline as prescribed by the American Academy of Pediatrics. And so how they defined it was, disciplinary strategies are effective when they're appropriate to a child's age and development. They teach the child to regulate his or her own behavior, keep him or her from harm, enhance his or her cognitive, socio-emotional, and executive functioning skills, and reinforce the behavioral patterns taught by the parents and caregivers. So for me, that was more in line with how I thought of discipline in regards to what we're talking about today. So as I stated earlier, in the martial arts, people often seek out training to better their discipline or to better their child's discipline. I can't tell you the number of times I ask parents when they call, what's the reason you want your child to do martial arts? And they're often like, discipline. My number one reason is discipline. And oftentimes I have a list of benefits that the kids can get here, and the parents will tick off discipline as the number one reason why. The other ones being respect, fitness, being able to protect themselves, self-defense, and those are sort of the common reasons, but discipline more often than not is the number one reason. Over my time here at the martial arts school, it's really been one of the most rewarding things to see develop in a student. And at the same time, I've developed it for myself. And like nothing else, martial arts has given me this discipline to achieve and finish and conquer anything that I've had come before me. And I can say that with certainty. So over my 20 years here at this school, I can proudly say with confidence that every person who's done martial arts and has done it consistently has really developed this like internalized and existential understanding of discipline. So it's one thing to know the definition of discipline and to understand it intellectually, but when you've really made it a part of you and who you are, it becomes a natural way of behaving. So for example, I started martial arts at the age of 27, which is pretty late, amongst the people that I've been around. I mean, it's still young, really, but it is older. A lot of people start when they're kids, which I really envy. And I think that I would have benefited a lot from doing it at a young age. But even at the age of 27, I saw the benefits of doing martial arts. And so having done it for so many years, after I had my kids, I had every excuse not to train and not to take care of myself physically because I was so beholden to these kids that I had to take care of. But then I realized I really needed to be good physically, and there was something pulling at me to get back to training or to get back to doing something to take care of myself. And it was like this internal feeling of something's missing. And that internal feeling of something's missing was my discipline calling for me. It was like this call to you got to get back on it. And I have to tell you that that's because of all the training that I had in martial arts. There was nothing else that I can attribute that to. With that, right, I went back and I set a goal for myself to run a marathon. And every day, one of the most realistic ways for me to exercise while my kids were in the house, while my husband was still at home, was to be able to run. So running became something that I set a goal with. It kept me in shape. And so I was running and I set a goal to do a marathon. And really difficult goal. Wow, not just a 5K or a 10K, but to really do a marathon. And because I put it out there, I really had to fulfill upon it. And that's part of the discipline that was within my brain. Having not done martial arts, I don't think I ever would have set that goal, nor would I have completed that goal. And I always use that example because I think it's really important that people understand that when you internalize discipline and it becomes part of who you are, it's really difficult to get rid of it. Simultaneously, after my second child was born, because of all of the discipline that I was sort of keeping in line with, I also set a goal to attain my Thai boxing instructor certification. So while I was running, I was also training intensively in Thai boxing to achieve my instructorship. And I can proudly say I achieved both of those. And my kids were under the age of 5 during this time. So there were no excuses. I figured out a time and I realized things could be done because inside of me, this discipline was calling. And I'm not saying all of this to brag. I'm really proud of my achievements, but I have to say I attribute it to discipline and the call to be disciplined in all areas of my life and to be the role model for my children. So discipline can be only achieved through habit forming behavior, right? So in the first phase of training at Progressive Martial Arts, we say that the first 100 days are crucial to a student's success. Why the first 100 days? It's when the kids develop self-discipline. Or actually, I like to say when the parents develop self-discipline. I actually spoke to my husband and he was telling his friend, he was actually talking to his friend. We were talking about discipline. And he was talking to his friend and his friend said, "Oh, my child just joined up at a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu school." And my husband responded, he's like, "No, you signed up for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu." Understanding that when a child does something, it's really the parents who are developing and signing up for something. It's really funny because it's the truth, right? So in the first 100 days is where we really develop self-discipline, which is creating the habit of coming to the school regularly. If the child or the student doesn't attend classes consistently in those first 100 days, you see a rapid drop off in their attendance and they may quit. right? So it's really important that in the first 100 days, we're supporting their self-discipline and creating a place where, or actually creating a program where we're supporting them throughout the process, giving them feedback, talking to the parents, developing relationships, and making sure they complete consistent attendance within those first 100 days. And I think there's also comparatively, and I think this is where the first 100 days is based upon, is to create a habit, you have to do it for 90 days. It's in line with that. And so this discipline of coming to martial arts is really important in those first 100 days. And so I can't emphasize enough that it's very important that attention be paid in those crucial periods so the kids develop good habits. And so the parents develop good habits. So in line with that, we also have other ways of creating discipline in the kids, right? And it goes along a little bit more with the American Academy of Pediatrics definition of discipline, in that we want to be where they're at developmentally. We want to make sure we're understanding their socio-emotional and developmental needs. And we base our discipline on those things and make sure that we're attending to the kids' individual needs. Just like we discussed in the last episode of Getting to Know Your Child, discipline is an important aspect in that, right? And I want to really emphasize that I'm not judging anybody for how they discipline their kids. Everybody has their own way of doing things, and I'm not the judge or the jury for how people discipline. I have different beliefs in the way I discipline because I've seen what's been effective as a mother and as an instructor in the martial arts for over 20 years. So where I'm coming from is discussing from a place of experience and really showing and telling you guys what's worked for us here at Progressive Martial Arts. So there's just a couple things that I think are really important for discipline. What I've seen over time, and I've seen different instructors take the role here and have different disciplinary methods, and different disciplinary methods have worked. But there's been some consistent things throughout every classroom that's been effective in disciplining the kids and creating disciplined children in the school. The first thing for that is setting rules, right? Kids are just free beings, right? They'll do whatever's in front of them, and they don't know the consequences of their actions, especially when they're really young. So the idea of rule setting is really to create a safe place for them and to create a safe atmosphere for them to do what they need to do. So in the school, we create these rules based on that alone, right? So we set rules of wearing a uniform. We have codes of behavior. We have protocols of paying respects when you enter and you leave the training floor, or when you're going into a round with a student, you're paying respects. So all of these like regularly structured rules create an environment where the kids know what to expect and know what's expected of them. And in that way, it creates a safety within their mind and safety for the whole group. I can't tell you enough, and I can't emphasize enough how kids crave it. They like this idea of knowing what's coming next. And it's really important for them to understand, like, whenever they come here, they know what's expected of them, and they know that we're going to adhere to those rules too, right? And the people around them will adhere to those rules, the other students. So setting rules is a really big part of creating discipline in this school, and we're always reiterating them. We discuss them when the kids sign up. We engage the parents in the rules. We send out paperwork on the rules. So it's always like communicated, and people know that there's a certain set of protocol that needs to be adhered to within this setting. The second thing we do is that we set schedules, right? Imagine a school where everybody just came in whenever they wanted to and did whatever they wanted to. It creates a lot of chaos, right? And it seems obvious, right? But the schedules and making sure that the kids are adhering, even the adults are adhering to a certain schedule creates discipline. There are schools where kids come in whenever they want to. They'll be like, I'm coming on Monday and Wednesday. No. Next week I'm coming on Tuesday and Thursday, right? Guess what happens with those kids, right? They don't come on a scheduled day, and then sometimes they're like, I'll push it off to the end of the week, right? And whatever happens at the end of the week, they miss their class. What we try and do at the beginning of a student's life here is we make sure they're giving us and committing to 2 or 3 days that they're going to come to class. In the beginning of their training, they're allowed to come twice a week. And it really helps them create a good schedule because we know that a lot of kids have other activities and homework and things that they need to do. So we're respectful of that. And we make sure that the kids are coming to those specific days. I have martial arts on Tuesday and Thursday at 4:00, and that's my schedule. And so it creates discipline in the way of respecting time, making sure the time management element is there with regard to school and other activities, and for their parents to understand that this is the expectation that is supposed to be met. So setting schedules is the second thing that we do to develop discipline. The third thing we do is we create a structure and repetition of techniques and exercises and the way that the class is run. Again, like I said in the beginning, we set rules and we make sure there's consistency. So structure is really important for kids. Like they need to know that the class is going to begin with our calisthenics. We're going to warm up. We're going to do some drills. We're going to have some fun in doing those drills. We're going to play a game, and we're going to discuss our powerful word every class, right? There's expectation. It's discipline within the class, right? So we're showing them that there's structure. You adhere to the structure, right? And we're going to make sure that you're getting everything you need within the class. The expectation that we have is fulfilled within that time period, right? The fourth thing we do is, and I think I touched upon this earlier, we make sure that we have feedback and communication with the family. So it's important every class to give the kids feedback on how they're doing. Every once in a while, they're testing and rank promoting, and there we give them more feedback. And then at the same time, in between those periods, we're communicating with them on the mat, and we're communicating with their parents also in the lobby. So all of this feedback and communication allows us, again, to get to know what's happening in the kids' lives, to make sure that we're letting them know that they're doing okay and that we're in touch with where they are, socio-emotionally and also developmentally. And if there's any obstacles that they're dealing with, right? You can't properly discipline or have the child do what you need them to do if there's chaos in other areas of their lives, right? So this communication piece once again. And then finally, we create a support system for success. So what do I mean by that? It's sort of more of what we were just talking about, right? This relationship that we have with the family and with the child and sort of becoming an extra layer of support for the family allows the child to feel safety and success in the area of martial arts. And without this, we can't really make sure that we're disciplining them and making sure they're developing self-discipline without the support of other people, right? That part is essential. I say this all because I think it's really important that these pieces be brought also to the home. Sometimes parents are like, listen, I want my kid to be disciplined. I mean, I've had this so many times where parents have come in and they're like, I can't handle my kid. I'm bringing them here because, they need discipline. They need to be disciplined. And I'll always say, listen, I appreciate that and we're going to do our part, but we need to do it in partnership together, right? The 2 hours or the hour that I have with your child every week or that my instructors have with your child every week is not going to be enough to develop the discipline that you're looking for. We can help each other, but we need to do it together as a team. And when we have that partnership, we really have great success. When we're on the same page and everybody's on mission to make sure that the kids are successful in attaining self-discipline, then it really leads to success with the kids, with the parents, and with the family in general. I think it's really important to talk about you as a parent and as a role model for discipline. I don't think that you can be a good disciplinarian without being disciplined yourself, right? So it always comes down to this, and we talked about this in a previous episode. You role modeling is the number one way that your kids are going to learn any type of character development traits that you want them to learn. So if you're not doing things for yourself and you're not being disciplined about your time, about your food, work, or your social life, things are going to affect your children. I can't express enough how even us having role models in the school who show discipline, I think one of the number one things that the kids learn from is their coaches and the assistants. They see kids coming consistently and getting better, and so they want to do that. They want to be that, They want to be like the coaches here at the school. And so that role model sets the tone for them. At the same time, you doing is more powerful again than you just saying, right? So if you want your kids to be disciplined about time, to be on time, get to places early, don't be harried about getting them out and then get to places 10 minutes late every time. That's not teaching them discipline. Making excuses for your kids because you are doing something wrong, right, doesn't lend to them developing discipline either, right? So it's really important that you're in line with this whole idea of self-discipline. Our student creed, line number 2 in our Warrior and Little Warrior program, is wholly built on self-discipline. So I intend to develop self-discipline in order to be a better student for myself and for others, right? So to develop self-discipline, the kids are always like, what is that? And oftentimes I'll be like, it's doing the things you have to do, even when you don't feel like it. They're like, oh, it's like, and then I'll just talk about, sometimes you got to clean your room, right? And you don't feel like doing it, right? But the more you do it, right, it just becomes a habit. Right? And so all those things that you have to do, right? And you just do it. Those are the things that are going to create your habits and the independence that you need for later on in life that will make things much more smooth, right? If you rely on other people to do everything and you don't do the things that you want, that you have to do, and only the things that you want to do, right? It's not realistic. So this idea of self-discipline really works in your favor. And I try and express that to the kids every time we talk about that student creed line number 2, right? It's one of my favorites. Besides role modeling, I think it's important, like we were talking about in the martial arts, that you set rules and boundaries in your house. When kids are little, they don't know what's going to happen to them if they touch a hot stove, right? You don't want them to learn by burning themselves, right? That's just an obvious example. But as they get older, continuing that rule setting and boundary setting is really important for them. Making sure they understand, listen, there's consequences to everything that you do, and you better be sure that I want to help you navigate that before you have to do it out in the real world. So you setting rules and boundaries in your home is really important in setting them up to be disciplined outside in the real world. And I don't think that you have to be the type of parent who's constantly yelling. And yes, you do it sometimes, and it's totally fine. But I think most effectively what I've seen with kids, I've done both on the training floor. Well, I'll tell a kid that it's wrong and don't do it again, and I don't give him a reason for it. And then conversely, I've done, if you sit like that and your legs are out, another child is going to trip on your legs and they're going to get hurt. More often than not, the second way is more effective in making sure they change their behavior long term, right? And then I don't have a bunch of accidents happening on the training floor. Same thing with at home, right? When I yell at my kid and I'm like, don't do that, and I'm cranky and I'm stressed out, they're just upset that I'm upset, right? And they don't want to get me upset. And that's their reason for not doing things. And I don't want that to be their primary reason for not doing things or doing the right thing. I want them to understand, I'm not going to do this because the consequences are X, Y, and Z, and I don't want to have to deal with those consequences. That whole idea of explaining to your child why I think is so effective. And I think parents are, sometimes they're just so busy and they're tired and they don't want to have to go through the whole explanation. But I think it's worth your time long term, and it's an investment, even when the kids are young, because I've been with kids here ages 3 and 4, and I've explained why. Maybe like not the in-depth version, but a reason why that they'll understand, and then they won't do it again. And there doesn't have to be voice yelling. There doesn't have to be screaming. There doesn't have to be conflict. It can be something where you're just having like a rational conversation, and then they get it, right? So that rule setting and boundary setting and telling the kids why is really important in the whole disciplinary process. The third thing that I think is really important is laying out expectations. So similarly to how we expect the kids to come in here, pay respects, wear their uniforms properly, be well kempt, right? Say the student creed, do their exercises to the best of their abilities, right? Those expectations you should have of your kids too. Different ages require different expectations, obviously. But even a kid as young as 3 should be able to put away their shoes, right? They should be able to help out to put away their dishes or push their chair in. And similarly, a teenager, listen, you're part of the house, right? You need to contribute a little bit, right? Not just for me, but so that you later in life can be somebody that other people can live with. Or if you're living on your own, you'll know how to take care of yourself. So laying out expectations, having certain things in place where you're doing the dishes tonight, you're going to take out the garbage, you're going to make your bed every morning, right? These expectations should be laid out at every stage. And you should always reevaluate and see what your child is capable of doing and how you can expound upon that. In the school, we do this powerful word program. And one of the words that we use is responsibility, right? And I always tell the kids, the more responsibilities you have at home and the more things that you show your parents you can do, the more trust they'll have in you and the more independence you will gain, right? So laying out these expectations and letting them know, when they meet those expectations, what comes next, right, will motivate them to want to be disciplined about their chores, their homework, all of those things. And they won't be so combative when you ask them to do something because they'll think it's out of the blue, right? This is something mom or dad expects of me. And so it's not a surprise. And so you guys can have a normal discussion, this with your teen or your tween, obviously, about okay, if you can't do it right now, let's set a time for you to do it. And so you can have a rational discussion about these expectations need to be met, but we can negotiate when it's done. And I can be respectful of your time, but we can make sure that they get done. Okay. And don't back down, right? Because in fact, right, you're helping them out, but you're also taking care of yourself at the same time, right? You doing everything for them, right, doesn't lend to happiness and fulfillment in your life either. And then the next thing, and we talked about this before, is spending time with your child. I can't be a good disciplinarian with the kids here at the school if I don't know them, right? If I'm telling kids what to do and I don't have a relationship with them, I have no business telling them what to do. So as an instructor, it's really important for me to develop a relationship with somebody before I act as a disciplinarian. I can't see how they effectively react to certain types of discipline if I don't know who they are and what they're going through. And if I'm on some student because they're not paying attention and something's going on at home or at school, I'm not being responsible as a teacher. And so the same thing goes for at home. I've seen a lot with my kids, and sometimes in the early days of not understanding how to take care of them, and I'm still learning. I'm really still learning. I would yell without knowing what's happening and really thinking that they're doing things badly on purpose, or they're being bad on purpose, or they're being manipulative. And I think it's a bad approach. I think getting to know what's going on and seeing why they're crabby and why they're cranky and, talking about it And then telling them, listen, maybe you're going through something right now, but I don't really like the way that you're talking to me. And maybe you need some time to come back to me when you're ready to speak to me respectfully. That goes a long way instead of like yelling at them and telling them how bad they are, and so it's been a learning process for me to implement what I've been doing here at the school as an instructor over the years with my own kids, because for me, it's so personal, but getting to know and taking the time and breathe and be like, okay, what's going on today? Did you have a hard day today? And then talking about what needs to be done and my expectations and how that needs to be fulfilled or how we can negotiate that is a discussion that then leads to more fruitful responses. Spending time with your child, right? Getting to know where they're at in their life, getting to know what's going on, again, plays a really big role in this whole idea of disciplining. And then finally, besides chores and responsibilities, right? I think it's really important that you let kids understand the consequences of their actions. Okay. Obviously, when they're little and it's something dangerous, like crossing the street and they don't know how to do it, you're going to have to do those things for them. But as they get older, I think it's really important that we don't catch them when they fall. So just as some stories here at the school, I've had kids who didn't pass belt tests, and there have been parents who've made excuses for their kids and said, well, he's got so much going on, and they'll make it seem like their child had things going on that wouldn't allow them to complete and fulfill their requirements, right? Alternatively, I've had kids fail, had meetings with parents, and the parents are like, I agree. What do they need to do to make sure that they get better? And we sit together and the kids understand that there's consequences if they don't do what's expected of them, right? So this idea of understanding consequences is a real life skill, right? You're not going to be able to be there all the time when your kids fall. And so them getting these repetitions of consequences allows them to be more pliable and flexible when things don't go their way and when they haven't fulfilled their responsibilities, right? Understanding that will allow them to know, I got to be more disciplined and I got to be more responsible. But if you're constantly giving them excuses and you're constantly catching them, they're going to feel like there's always that safety net and that they don't have to be responsible and that they can blame other people, right? And that's lack of discipline. So, if your kid forgets to do their homework or they don't do their homework, instead of you doing their homework or writing a note to the teacher or letting them stay home from school, let them figure it out. Let them go into school without that homework and let them deal with the consequences of their actions. That repetition of feeling the weight of responsibility is going to live with them, right? And it's going to carry them to the next thing that they need to do. And hopefully it will be the only time that they'll forget their homework, but don't rob them of that experience, right? Because it's educational, right? Just here, if the kids are on the training floor, right, and something happens, we allow them to understand the consequences of their actions. Listen, you're not going to get a stripe today because you were misbehaving in class. You have an opportunity the next class to do better. You can show me that you earned this, right? But today, I can't prize you for doing the wrong thing, right? So I can't emphasize enough, because I think these days a lot of parents just catch the kids because they don't want to see them unhappy. But again, you're robbing them of this really important and crucial experience of learning responsibility, right? And in turn, becoming disciplined. So I hope you enjoyed our discussion today on discipline. I think it's a topic that I could talk about for a really long time. And I think it's really important as a parent that, you develop your own style and you learn about how you can develop a way to discipline your child more effectively, not just through this podcast, but through reading books, listening to other podcasts, right? Learning about your individual child, educating yourself, because we're only as good a parent as we are, with the resources that we have. So constantly be around people that are supporting you and helping you so that you can have a really great relationship with your child and that your child can develop self-discipline. Thanks for joining me for another empowering episode of Black Belt Parenting Podcast. For more information on this podcast, please log on to blackbeltparentingpodcast.com. And don't forget to like and subscribe to whatever social media platform you are enjoying this on. Stay resilient, stay compassionate, and keep nurturing those Black Belt parenting skills. The Black Belt Parenting Podcast is produced and recorded by Press Record Studios.